The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Now a man was ill, Lazarus, from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. Mary was the one who had anointed the Lord with perfumed oil and dried his feet with her hair. It was her brother Lazarus who was ill. So the sisters sent word to Jesus saying, "Master, the one you love is ill." When Jesus heard this, he said, "This illness is not to end in death, but is for the glory of God, that the Son of God may be glorified through it." Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that he was ill, he remained for 2 days in the place where he was. Then after this he said to his disciples, "Let us go back to Judea." The disciples said to him, "Rabbi, they were just trying to stone you, and you want to go back there?" Jesus answered, "Are there not 12 hours in a day? If one walks during the day, he does not stumble, because he sees the light of this world. But if one walks at night, he stumbles, because the light is not in him." He said this and then told them, "Our friend Lazarus is asleep, but I am going to awaken him." So the disciples said to him, "Master, if he is asleep, he will be saved." But Jesus was talking about his death, while they thought he meant ordinary sleep. So then Jesus said to them clearly, "Lazarus has died, and I am glad for you that I was not there, that you may believe. Let us go to him." Thomas, called Didymus, said to his fellow disciples, "Let us also go to die with him." When Jesus arrived, he found Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, only about 2 miles away, and many of them that had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them about their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary sat at home. Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now, I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise." Martha said to him, "I know he will rise in the resurrection on the last day." Jesus told her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, even if he dies, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?" She said to him, "Yes, Lord. I have come to believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, the one who is coming into the world." When she had said this, she went and called her sister Mary secretly, saying, "The teacher is here and is asking for you." As soon as she heard this, she rose quickly and went to him. For Jesus had not yet come to the village, but was still where Martha had met him. So when those who were with her in the home, comforting her, saw Mary get up quickly and go out, they followed her, presuming that she was going to the tomb to weep there. When Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, and those who had come with her weeping, he became perturbed and deeply troubled and said, "Where have you laid him?" They said to him, "Sir, come and see." And Jesus wept. So those people with her said, "See how he loved him." Some of them also said, "Could not the one who opened the eyes of the blind man have done something so that this man would not have died?" So Jesus, perturbed again, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone lay across it. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the dead man's sister, said to him, "Lord, by now there will be a stench, for he has been dead for 4 days." Jesus said to her, "Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. Jesus raised his eyes and said, "Father, I thank you for hearing me. I know that you always hear me. But because of the crowd here, I have said this, that they may believe that you sent me." And when he said this, he cried out in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out!" The dead man came out, tied hand and foot with burial bands, and his face was wrapped in a cloth. So Jesus said to them, "Untie him and let him go." Now many of the Jews who had come to Mary had seen what he had done and began to believe in him. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
I would like to begin by thanking Father Steve for the invitation to be here amongst you for the next few days. It's a privilege for me, and I have observed in the last morning and also at St. Benedict a warmth, a welcoming, a greeting that I've never experienced in other parishes as warmly. So I thank you for that spirit that obviously is here. One of my assignments was to be chaplain of Upstate Medical Center. And whenever I hear this particular gospel, I can't help but remembering a woman who came into the hospital from a little country town. She had been undergoing chemo for many months, and now they're going to take x-rays to see whether it was effective or not. She came in on a Sunday, but before coming, went to Mass and heard this gospel. She was touched by the gospel. She had such hope as a result of this gospel that when she came in, that was on her mind. They took the x-rays and the news was not good. They told her that there was nothing more that could be done and that probably she just had a few months left. She had small children, and that was, of course, as a mother, her first thought. How am I going to prepare my children? How am I going to give them hope and strength when they have to know that their mother has died? For a couple of days she thought and prayed about it, and then on the third day, when I came in, she said, "I've got it." She said, "You know, we live in the country. When I go home, I'm going to get a caterpillar. I'm going to bring the caterpillar in, put it in a little glass place, and I'm going to tell the children that that caterpillar is Mommy. Pretty soon, Mommy is going to be put into what seems to be a box." Of course, she was referencing the caterpillar as it began to weave its cocoon. She said, "It looks like the caterpillar is dead. And that's what it's going to look like to you when Mommy dies. But that's not what's really going to happen." And she said, "When the cocoon opens and the butterfly emerges, it'll be my way of teaching them that when I die, I fly away from my body. That I, the real me, lives, and lives in a better way than I lived before." I was so touched, so overwhelmed with that faith and that insight into today's gospel that I never forgot it. And whenever I preach, I try to bring that on this Sunday and share it with the people with whom I am speaking. Today's gospel, then, has a number of meanings for us. The first is that in 2 weeks, there'll be another stone that's rolled away. And on that day, God the Father will reenact what happened to Lazarus. On that day, God will say, take away the nails, take away the thorns, take away the flogging marks, take away the blood, take away the spit, let him come out, let him live, let him announce the good news that death is no longer the last word. And it also helps us to understand when we have witnessed the death of someone we love, that while we cannot see that same Jesus that came to Lazarus, that same Jesus is in that room. That same Jesus says at the moment of death, take away all that binds them. Take away the IVs. Take away the tubes, the oxygen, the medicine, the pills, the injections, the chemo. Come. Become free. And so it anticipates the feast of Easter for Jesus, but also our own rising, our own death and life, giving us that same assurance that he who called Lazarus will call us and those we love. But then there's another meaning to this gospel, because inside of us there is the tragedy that we die inside. Why do we die and how do we die? Because it's part of being human. We call it, we forget. We get going so fast. We get involved with so much that we tend to forget what's essential and what's not essential. And that's why at the beginning of the season, the church uses those words, remember, as it takes ashes and places them upon our forehead. Remember that thou art dust, and to dust thou shalt return, which means, remember thy body is from dust, and to dust it shall return, but you are from God, and to God you shall return. But remember more than anything else that life goes fast. Don't take it for granted. Live it to its fullest. Appreciate what you have while you have it. All of us this morning got up out of bed. A lot of people couldn't. We walked to the place where we turned on the faucet. Hot water came out. We washed our hands. We drank. Perhaps we had a cup of coffee. Our house was warm. All of the gifts that have been already given to us today. How many times have we said thank you? Or how many times have we taken it for granted and forgotten that all these gifts, 100,000 miracles happen every day. And because we're so familiar with them, we forget their gifts. And thus, we forget to say thank you. This message, I think, of the second part of this gospel is described very beautifully by Norman Cousins, although he wasn't referring to the gospel, when he says, the tragedy of life is not of death, but what dies inside you while you live. What dies inside you while you live. And Ann Landers used to say, I know a lot of people that died at 30 and are buried at 75. And so Jesus calls us to life during this season. He calls us and he says, come out of the routine, of the rut that you live in. Come out of taking life and others for granted. Stop living half-heartedly. You may be dead to your feelings and your senses. You may be blind to the gifts that are all around you. You may have acquired a negative attitude and petty thinking. Or you may be dead to the presence of God in you and around you. Or you might not be enjoying life as I want you to. And so he calls us out and tells us to come forth and experience life. You know, the word Lent means spring. And you know what that means when spring finally comes. The warmth, the sun, the birds, the grass, the flowers. Spring means new life. And Jesus, as a result of our living Lent, wants us to begin again with new life. And so the church, in order to comply with this, offers us an opportunity during Lent. We call it a parish mission. A time in which we come to remember what we forgot, to come alive to what's dead and within ourselves, and to enjoy the journey much more. I want to confess to you that I hate going to supermarkets. When I have to go to a supermarket, I first of all try to figure out when there are going to be few people. So I might figure 2 o'clock in an afternoon, figuring kids are in school, adults who are working, and so I get in the car, I head for the supermarket, I drive in the parking lot, I get out of the car, I look to the right, pat myself on the back. You were right. There's not many cars here. But now I'm going into the front door and I turn to my left. 8 buses. Senior citizens. I've got nothing against senior citizens since I'm one. At 8 busloads, no. I say something I won't repeat here. I grab a cart. I start down the aisle, and in some supermarkets, the first thing you're going to hit is the vegetables, fruits. And you know what happens there? People pick, people eat, people talk. With their baskets along the aisle so you can't get through. So I wait politely, what I think for an hour or 2, and then I say, would you please move your cart? And I get a dirty look. If I'm wearing a collar, I say they hate priests. Then I start down the aisle. I know what I want, but you know in those aisles, if you want, for example, spaghetti, there's 20 different kinds of spaghetti. So you gotta look over all these spaghettis, and then you have to look under to find the prices, to find the cheapest ones. Well, finally get what I need, I throw it in the basket. Now I'm going up to the checkout counter, and I'm pretty happy because there's only a woman in front of me. I get behind her, she's got everything checked out. Now she's putting her hand into her pocketbook, and I think she's pulling out her money. Instead, she pulls out 2,482 coupons. I say something else under my breath. Then I get into the next aisle. Now I'm behind the person who has just but one more thing to check out. I begin to smile again until I hear those awful words, price check. There's only one more aisle open. I get into that aisle. I come up to the girl that's checking out, has a little sign. I'm interested in what the sign says. The sign says, trainee, will you please be patient? I get back to my office and the staff, I can hear them say, boy, he's in a grouch. And someone else says, supermarket. The other one said, oh, okay, now I understand. Well, that's my experience of going to the supermarket. Suppose we were to bring a person from Latin America or Africa to the same supermarket that would see the same things that I was seeing. The reaction would be different. They would think they died and went to heaven. They might jump with joy and begin to cry out of overwhelming disbelief at the beauty and the richness of what lie before them. They would think they had found the land flowing with milk and honey. Two of us looking at the same thing. My thinking had become stinking thinking, and theirs was real. That's what can happen to us. We have so much. We get so used to. We get taken for granted. And we need to come to life to experience again the fact that we are so blessed moment by moment. The second example is a letter from a college freshman to her mother and father. Name's Kathy. Dear Mom and Dad, the dorm burned down last night. The reason being, my roommate and I were smoking pot. But that's okay, because my boyfriend said I can move in with him. I was planning on moving in with him anyway after the baby was born. He doesn't have a job, but he loves me very much. His father owns a gas station, and over the gas station is a nice little apartment that he said we can use. The only thing is, the apartment is in Anchorage, Alaska. Parents are having a heart attack. They come to the bottom of the page and it says, P.S. Dear Mom and Dad, none of the above is true. Don't smoke pot, dorm didn't burn down, not pregnant, not moving in with my boyfriend, not going to Anchorage, Alaska. However, I did fail chemistry, and I just want you to keep it in perspective. I had lost perspective with the supermarket. We all lose perspective. And so we're called to look at that. We're called to let Jesus call us out of those things that keep us from living fully and completely as Jesus wants us to do. And so we have a parish mission. The other way I describe that is I take a clock, a watch, a drum, a clock and a watch. The drum I would equal to the various duties we have every day, whether it's our occupation, things we have to do, all the things that keep us busy. If you don't stop the drum, you'll not hear the clock. And the clock are the people around us, the people who mean something to us, those who are in our families, those who are in friendship with us. Unless you stop the drum, you never really hear the clock. And sometimes you have to cease the clock or you won't hear the watch. And the watch is the voice of Jesus within us that loves us, that calls us to existence, that tells us how much He wants us to enjoy the 100,000 miracles that happen every day. And so a mission asks us to shut down the drum, shut down the clock, so that we can hear the watch. Beginning tomorrow night, Tuesday and Wednesday, just for an hour, we will come together. In today's gospel, Mary was told that Jesus wanted her to come. Today, it's He saying to you and to me, come. I want to call something out of you in order that you might have life and have it more abundantly. And so the topic tomorrow evening is the gospel. The word gospel means good news, not good advice. We live in a society that's filled with bad news. Bad news. We need to hear the good news. And the good news is like Irish music. It touches the heart and it makes the feet dance. Tuesday night, the topic will be, are you having a good time? Are you enjoying each day of the journey? Or are you taking it for granted? Do we want to come to the end and say, I'm glad I did? Or will we say, I wish I had? And finally, on Wednesday evening, the end of the mission is entitled, I'm not okay, you're not okay, but that's okay, according to the gospel, which simply means that being human is messy. It simply means that God loves the messiness that is each one of us and helps us to overcome, but to accept the fact that we can't do it perfectly. And so I would simply ask you to imagine for a moment that you're home this afternoon, around 3 o'clock, the doorbell rings, you're not expecting anybody, You go, open the door, and there is a courier who hands you a telegram. And you take the telegram in, and you rip it open, and you begin to read. And it says, "My dear friend, I cordially invite you to spend 3 evenings with me, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, at St. Mary's. I have a gift to give to you. I hope that you and I can spend those hours together. Love, Jesus." And over at the left-hand corner are 4 little letters, RSVP, please.